Adam Kane had always known that the shadows were never far behind. After years of working as a former secret agent, he thought he had escaped the constant chase. But as the ringing phone shattered the silence of his small apartment in the dead of night, he realized the past wasn't done with him yet. The voice on the other end was familiar, yet full of urgency. "Adam, we've got a problem. The network's been breached," Eliza Ford, a former cybersecurity expert who now worked as a private investigator, said. Her voice was strained, betraying a sense of fear Adam wasn't used to hearing from her. "What are you talking about?" Adam asked, his fingers already moving over the computer keys in a reflexive motion. His thoughts were racing. "They've found us. Whoever they are, they've breached every level of our encryption. Everything's compromised." There was a pause, then Eliza added, "And one of the files we've been tracking? It leads straight to you." Adam froze, his hand hovering over the keyboard. "That's impossible. I covered my tracks. No one could have traced me. Not after all this time." Eliza's voice was urgent now. "Adam, someone on the inside is feeding them information. They know too much. You need to leave. Now." Adam stared at the screen, his mind spinning. He had been careful, too careful, to let anyone track him. But if Eliza was right, there was only one conclusion. Someone had found his weaknesses. The shadows he thought he'd left behind had found a way back into his life, and now they were coming for him. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he closed the laptop with a calmness that didn't match the chaos inside his head. He knew what had to be done. The only question was whether he could trust Eliza enough to believe the people he once trusted might be the very ones plotting against him. Minutes later, Adam was already on the move, grabbing the essentials: his phone, a jacket, and the small revolver he kept hidden in the drawer. He didn't trust anyone, not anymore. The world he once served was dark, filled with lies, and the only way to survive was to stay a step ahead. As he left his apartment, Adam's mind raced through every contact, every operation he had been part of in the past. Who could have turned on him? Who could have betrayed him? The answers were hidden beneath layers of deceit, and he would have to unravel them all if he wanted to stay alive. He stepped into the night, his footsteps echoing in the empty streets. Every shadow seemed to stretch toward him, and for a moment Adam felt like the past was closing in. But he didn't slow down. He couldn't afford to. The conspiracy that had been quietly brewing beneath the surface was now coming for him, and there was no escaping it. The city was full of secrets, and Adam Kane was about to uncover the deadliest one yet. Adam's car roared to life as he sped through the dark streets of the city. His mind raced, but his hands remained steady on the wheel. He knew the stakes. Every decision now could be the difference between life and death. The conspiracy was vast, and there were too many unknowns. But there was one thing Adam knew for certain. He couldn't trust anyone, not even Eliza. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Without hesitation, he pulled it out, glancing at the screen. It was a message from an encrypted contact, one he hadn't heard from in years. The name flashed on the screen, JH. It was John Harris, a former colleague from his agent days. Adam's heart skipped a beat. John had disappeared without a trace a year ago, right after the last operation they'd worked on together. No one had heard from him since, and Adam had assumed he was either dead or had gone into hiding. But now this message was a sign that John was still alive. And if he was reaching out, something was terribly wrong. The message was short and cryptic. "They're watching you. Trust no one. They know everything. I'll be at the old warehouse, midnight. Don't be late." Adam didn't need to be told twice. He immediately changed direction, heading toward the outskirts of the city, where the abandoned warehouse district lay in shadow. The place was a relic from the past, where secrets had been hidden and deals made in the darkness. If John was alive and willing to meet, it could only mean one thing. Everything Adam thought he knew was about to change. As the minutes ticked by, Adam's mind wandered back to his last mission with John and the team. It had been a disaster. A mole inside their operation had tipped off the enemy, and they'd barely escaped with their lives. John had been the one who pulled Adam out of the line of fire, but after that night, John had vanished. Adam had been left to clean up the mess, but now he wondered if John had known all along about the betrayal, if he had been the real target. When Adam arrived at the warehouse, the place was dark and silent, just like he expected. He parked his car a few hundred yards away, knowing better than to get too close. Slowly, he made his way toward the entrance, the sound of his boots echoing off the concrete floor. His instincts were on high alert, every nerve firing as he approached the door. As he stepped inside, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was John. But something was wrong. His posture was tense, his face gaunt, and there was a look in his eyes that Adam hadn't seen before, a mix of fear and determination. "John," Adam said quietly, keeping his distance. "What the hell's going on?" John's voice was low and strained. "They've been watching you for a long time, Adam. The conspiracy goes deeper than you think. It's not just about us anymore. They're pulling strings everywhere." Adam's heart sank. Who's behind it? Who can we trust? John shook his head, stepping closer. "That's just it. There's no one left to trust. It's all been a lie. The government, the agency, everything we thought we were protecting. It's all part of the game." Adam took a step back, his mind spinning. This wasn't the John Harris he remembered. The John he knew was calm, strategic, always a step ahead. But this John was broken, haunted. And his words weren't just unsettling, they were terrifying. John reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small encrypted flash drive. "This has everything you need to know. It's the key to the whole operation. But be careful, Adam. They'll be coming for you next." Before Adam could respond, the sound of distant sirens cut through the silence. John's eyes widened in panic. "They've found us," he whispered. "You need to get out now." Adam didn't hesitate. He grabbed the flash drive from John's hand, turned and bolted for the exit. As he sprinted through the warehouse, his mind raced. He had the answers now, but with them came even more questions. Who could be behind this global conspiracy? How far did it go? And most importantly, who could he trust? The night air felt colder as Adam disappeared into the darkness, the sound of approaching sirens growing louder with each passing second. The conspiracy was only just beginning, and Adam Kane was at the heart of it. But one thing was certain, there was no turning back now. Adam didn't stop running. His mind was focused solely on survival. As he dashed through the empty streets, the cool night air burned his lungs, but he didn't slow down. His heart pounded in his chest, and the flashing lights of police cars illuminated the alleyways behind him. They were coming for him, but he couldn't afford to think about that now. The flash drive he'd stolen from John was the only thing that mattered. He didn't know what was on it, but he knew it was dangerous. John had been adamant. Whatever was on that drive had the potential to destroy everything Adam had ever known. Adam ducked into an abandoned building to catch his breath. The world felt like it was closing in on him. Every creak of the building and every distant siren made him feel more paranoid. He pulled the flash drive from his jacket pocket and stared at it. A single file name flashed on his screen when he plugged it into his phone. Project Eclipse. The title sent a chill down his spine. He'd heard rumors of Project Eclipse, a covert operation tied to the highest levels of the government. But it was only a rumor, a myth that agents whispered about in hushed tones. No one ever mentioned it in official circles. It was an operation so secret, it was as if it never existed. He clicked the file open. The screen lit up with lines of encrypted code, and Adam's fingers flew across the keyboard, working quickly to decrypt it. His experience from years in the field kicked in. He knew this was the most dangerous thing he'd ever uncovered. The information on that drive wasn't just a threat to him, it was a threat to the entire world. File decrypted. As the text finally appeared on the screen, Adam's eyes widened. It outlined the existence of a shadow organization. the Syndicate, that had been controlling world events from the shadows for decades. Every major conflict, every political shift, every crisis in history, it all pointed back to them. And now, the Syndicate was closer to realizing their ultimate goal: global domination. Adam felt a wave of disbelief wash over him. This was bigger than anything he could have imagined. John had been right. The conspiracy went much deeper than he thought. The very government he had once trusted was complicit in this vast web of control. But there was one thing that didn't add up. The document mentioned a final piece, a mysterious asset that was key to completing the Syndicate's plan. The text was unclear, but it was evident that Adam was the one who was being hunted for a reason. He was connected to it, and John knew that. The silence of the abandoned building was interrupted by the sudden sound of footsteps. Adam froze, his hand instinctively reaching for the gun in his coat. He had to be ready. He had to trust no one. The door creaked open slowly, and a shadowy figure stepped inside. Adam's finger tightened on the trigger. Then he saw the face. It was Eliza. Eliza! Adam's voice was low, disbelief coating his words. "What are you doing here?" She held her hands up, a gesture of peace. "I was trying to warn you, Adam. They're everywhere. The Syndicate has eyes everywhere, and now you're in the middle of it. I didn't want you to get involved, but it's too late. They know about the drive." Adam stood still, eyes locked on her. "You're with them, aren't you? You've been playing me the whole time." "No," she said, stepping forward. "I'm not one of them. I'm trying to stop them, but I can't do it alone. You and we're the only ones left who can take them down." Adam hesitated, the tension palpable in the air. His mind was screaming at him to trust no one. But something about Eliza's expression told him that she was telling the truth. She wasn't his enemy, not yet. "What do you want from me?" Adam asked, his voice steady. "I want you to trust me," she said, her voice earnest. "The Syndicate thinks you have the final piece. They've been tracking you for days, and if we don't act fast, they'll get to you first." Adam looked down at the flash drive, a heavy weight on his chest. The stakes had never been higher. "What's the next step?" Eliza moved closer, pulling out a small map. "We need to get to the underground facility. There's one place left where the Syndicate's operation can be stopped. But they've fortified it. We'll need a plan." Adam glanced at her, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. "And if we don't stop them? The world as we know it will change forever," she said, her voice grave. "It's not just about you or me anymore. It's about everyone." Adam nodded slowly. He didn't have time to think about the consequences. There was only one choice left: take down the Syndicate or become another victim in their shadowy game. He turned toward Eliza. "Let's do it." Together they walked out of the abandoned building into the unknown. The conspiracy was far from over, and they were about to uncover the darkest secrets hidden beneath the surface.